here, which is really fun. We have some staff here, as well as guests from the Albany School of Pharmacy, as well as the State Department of Health. So this is going to be a great time together. We have a good number of students from around the state, which is fabulous. And welcome to our monthly coordinator and wellness nurse call. I've pulled up the agenda here. It's not me doing that. Someone much more seasoned in technology than myself. Sorry, Melissa. I'm nervous. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have our guest from the Albany College of Pharmacy first, so we can get her off to take an exam. And then I get to share with you about my visit last month with the Montpelier panel. Then we have time for data update, and then hopefully time for some questions and answers. So I'll just do a quick reminder to you all about muting your phones. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy Palman, who's going to introduce our guest speaker.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I want to introduce Marci Wood to you all. She's from the class of 2017, Dr. Pharmacy candidate from Albany College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences here in Colchester, Vermont. And Marci's going to speak to us about medication adherence. She's been doing some work with Morisky Scale and medication adherence at Richmond Family Medicine. Medication adherence obviously is quite important as we evaluate our patients from doing Sash assessment to some of the hypertension work that we've all been working on. And I think that the tools and the insights that Marci has learned and will share with us will also be good information for us to consider as we move forward and consider using something like the Morisky Scale. She'll get into that a little bit more. So I'm going to turn it over to Marci. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to share some of my experiences with assessing the adherence at Richmond Family Medicine in Richmond, Vermont. I think we're still just working on getting the presentation up there.
Those of you that are just joining us, we're just about to have the PowerPoint on from our guest speaker. We're just having a minor technical difficulty.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so let's see that. Go ahead. You're good.
Momentarily, I promise. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, we're seeing it.
There.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
All right, so I'll just to give a brief introduction to some of the background about this project that I was doing at Richmond Family Medicine. You know, knowing that cardiovascular disease is the cause of morbidity and mortality, especially in patients that have diabetes, and also knowing that having multiple can contribute to having issues with medication adherence, we were really interested in identifying some patients with both diabetes and hypertension, and specifically hypertension above the goal defined by the American Diabetes Association, the 140/90 as a marker for them being uncontrolled. So having a blood pressure higher than this, and looking at those patients, seeing if any issues with medication adherence that we could identify were really, you know, contributing to their blood pressure being
We're talking about hypertension, cardiovascular disease. I don't know who's talking. I'm sorry.
Please mute your phone. Please mute your phone.
And so to, you know, talk specifically about what I was doing, I was really interested in, again, looking and trying to identify those patients that had both diabetes and uncontrolled hypertension, and looking at different ways to assess their adherence and see if intervention regarding adherence would help improve their blood pressure control. So some of the objectives of my project, I was working with the Vermont Department of Health and staff and providers at Richmond Family Medicine to assess adherence in the patients at Richmond Family Medicine that had diabetes and hypertension. And I, as a pharmacy student, was interested in looking and seeing how pharmacy-led intervention could help improve adherence. But as I'll talk about, the methods that I use to assess adherence can really be used by any healthcare professional. So some of the methods how I identified these patients, we did a EMR report to kind of pull out patients that had a diagnosis code of diabetes and their most recent blood pressure higher than that goal of 140/90 that's defined by the ADA. And so this report initially identified 93 patients at Richmond Family Medicine. We had excluded 43 for various reasons, like having a blood pressure recheck of less than 140/90, so they were kind of more at goal than the patients that we included. Some had transferred care, and then that left us with a baseline of 50 patients to have the initial assessment of adherence. And then at the 3-month follow-up that we conducted, we excluded an additional 18 patients for reasons such as not being able to contact them to initially assess adherence, some for health reasons, some if they didn't have a follow-up blood pressure reading available at that 3-month time, just to kind of keep things consistent. And so to give a little bit more information about the methods that I was using to assess adherence, the first was what is called a medication possession ratio, and you can see the calculation for that on the slide. I got the refill information for antihypertensive medications either from SureScripts, which was available through the Richmond Family Medicine EMR, or at baseline, if I wasn't able to get that for some patients, I was able to get it from their pharmacy records. And to give a little bit more information about the medication possession ratio, it's capped at 100%, and having high adherence is defined as having a medication possession ratio greater than 80%, being in possession of your medication 80% of the time or greater. And that is subjective, but that's really what has been studied and used in published literature, so that's kind of what I went with too. The second way I measured adherence, which is the one I'll be kind of talking the most about, is this Morisky Medication Adherence Scale. It's a 8-question survey that's been validated and studied specifically in patients with hypertension. I administered it to patients by either calling them on the phone, that was the majority, so I'd call them and ask them the questions on the phone, or if they were coming into the clinic and I hadn't been able to contact them on the phone, I'd just ask them the questions in person if it worked in the flow of their already scheduled appointment. And so here are the questions that are included in the Morisky Medication Adherence Scale. You can see questions 1 through 7, and I'll go to the next slide in a second. These are all yes or no questions, so it was, easy for a patient to answer yes or no fairly quickly. And then the last question here has a couple different options. And how I administered this was I would go through all 8 questions and write down the patient's answer. And then I would be able to go back, and if they had a specific question where they identified a possible barrier to adherence, I was able to talk to them a little bit more, ask them to provide some more information, and kind of that facilitated a conversation about adherence. And so some common barriers I encountered, and I think they're probably pretty obvious, but a lot of people didn't have a full understanding about what hypertension is. Some people had some perceived drug interactions between some of their antihypertensive medications. and a lot of people, just forgetting to take medications. But I found these questions really helped patients kind of identify those problems for themselves, and it, like I said, it really facilitated a discussion about adherence. And so to just briefly go over some of my results from this project, these values are comparing the blood pressure readings for those 32 patients that we had data for both at baseline and the 3-month follow-up. So you can see the average systolic and diastolic pressure both went down at 3-month follow-up. The average change was a decrease in 6.5 millimeters of mercury for the systolic blood pressure and a decrease in 6.1 millimeters of mercury for the diastolic pressure. And, these were both significant decreases. And while we can't say, this is directly related to the intervention just because we didn't have a control group, we are observing that there was a change here. And just some more information specifically about these patients.
The other two?
Had a systolic blood pressure less than 140, so we're at goal at the 3-month follow-up, and then 11 had systolic and diastolic less than 40 and less than 90. So this figure is really a comparison of the Morisky medication adherence scale, which is this outside ring, and then the medication possession ratio, which is this inside ring, and kind of comparing these two different measures of adherence. You can see, I think the biggest takeaway from this is that for those patients at baseline, 89% of them were classified as being high, having high adherence with the medication possession ratio, whereas for the Morisky medication adherence with questions, it was more split. Only 43 were high adherence, 44 were moderate, and then 13 even were considered as having a low adherence. So what I kind of took away from this was, I think it really shows some of those people just look at that ratio, they might be considered having a high adherence when they really have some problems or barriers to adherence that are identified just by them being in possession of their medications. And so just some more results from the 3-month follow-up. This table is comparing the medication possession ratio average at baseline compared to the 3 months, and then the average change. And so you can see the average change was an increase in 3.93, which was also a significant increase. And then the figure 2 on the side here is looking at the Morisky medication adherence scale. The one thing to note about both of these is we weren't able to assess Morisky medication adherence scale for all patients at 3 months, and we weren't able to calculate medication possession ratios for everyone at 3 months either. The medication possession ratios were mostly because after the first of the year, some patients' insurances weren't reporting the SureScripts anymore, and so that was an issue there. And then for the Morisky, since I wasn't at the clinic to call everyone, it was a little bit difficult to, have that assessed for everyone. For the Morisky scale, you can see there wasn't much of a change at baseline compared to follow-up, but I think that is related to having such a small sample size. And I think, it'd be interesting to see if we did another follow-up, maybe 6 months, if we could get all those people. I think we'd see even a bigger change. So I really wanted to spend the most time kind of talking about, my experience with the Morisky scale, and have a lot of time if anyone has questions about its use. I thought, in my experience, definitely it was really easy to use. I thought that was a really big benefit. Patients really were able to understand the questions, and like I've been saying, I think it really facilitated a great conversation about adherence. It's definitely more patient-centered than something like the medication possession ratio, just straight calculation. Like we've been, kind of been highlighting, I think it's really important to realize with that ratio calculation, it might be classifying more patients as high adherence than they really are. And you know, people can have their medications, be in possession of their medications, but not be taking them as prescribed. A couple negatives that I could think about with the Morisky scale is that those 8 questions can be time-consuming. There is a 4-question option, which I have on the next slide, just to consider. You know, if the 8-question might not be feasible, there is a 4-question option. It does have a payment also associated with its use to get access to the proprietary scoring to determine who's high, moderate, or low adherence. And then there is that question scale, so you can see it kind of just takes some of those highlights out of the 8 questions. There's a star next to the 2. I don't have as much experience with the 4-question scale, but when I was kind of looking up for the questions, it looks like that second question has recently been revised. It used to say something about being careless about taking medication. Now it says, it kind of took that word out, because I think in their experience with using it, some patients were kind of, ooh, that word careless didn't sit right. So they've revised it, and it's another option. I just want a couple acknowledgments. First to Dr. Gill, who's here with us in South Boston, who is my faculty advisor for this project and really helped me out a lot. And to everyone at Richmond Family Medicine, Nicole and Robin from the Vermont Department of Health for really, you know, making this project possible. And then also to Dr. Morisky, who helped provide his scale for us to use. And I'll take any questions anyone has.
Well, I was medication session rate difficult it was for you guys to get a hold of that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It wasn't difficult to calculate. The calculation was very easy, but that SureScript data, there was no good way to get that out all at once from the EMR, so I actually had to go into each patient's profile and like put all of those refill dates in an Excel document. So if there would be a better way to get those refill dates out for like everyone, it would have been really easy. But you know, having to go into each patient's profile, it took way longer to make those calculations than to just ask those 8 questions.
And do you recall the amount of time you spent asking the Morisky scale?
I would say when I was calling people on the phone, my phone calls were an average of between 5 to 10 minutes. The questions themselves only took about maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but then that conversation is what really I spent more time on.
And you have pretty much, once you went through your questions, then you'd be able to go back and talk to them about saying or something.
Yeah, I can like give an example. Let me just go back to those questions. For example, if I asked the question 2 there and somebody said, yes, you know, there were days when I did not take my high blood pressure medications. At the end of the call, I could go back and say, oh, you know, for question 2, you said over the past couple days, there's been a few days when you didn't take your medication. Can you tell me more about why that was? And then that would kind of prompt them to talk a little bit more about what some of their problems were.
Over the chat? Go ahead and ask yours. Great.
So Christy and I have talked about this topic. Mike and I had last week, because we had heard from you, but it was an aside, that there was some sort of potential arrangement that can sometimes be reached with Dr. Morisky about having the cost of the scale waived if the data is not going to be used for more.
He had kind of something he had mentioned kind of in an aside in an email when I had mentioned to him that was interested in possibly using this. We never really like collaborated much more, so I would definitely recommend like contacting him. He's always really receptive to emailing me back.
Oh yeah, that's totally down too. Oh really? You left on the ground? Oh.
Right. It's just a higher tier method for scoring and knowing like who's high tier and low tier. Some of these questions are weighted higher, some questions are reverse calculated. But that's really the method you close paid for.
Right.
But this is available like everywhere. Like you can use questions even just in general practice, just to kind of get a general sense of each system.
Tool. This would be a tool we have in our bag, so to speak, when we're having these discussions with patients about blood pressure and any, disease process. And are you taking your medicines? Let's go through these questions.
Oh my goodness. Hey, I don't feel good either.
Excuse me. You guys need to mute your phone. People are having trouble hearing, so please mute your phone. Thank you.
Something else to keep in mind too, these are very disease specific. You can't ask general questions about your medication in general. You have to be very specific about, your asthma medication, your blood pressure medication, or even specific medication you're worried about. That's how this scale is kind of validated. It's very disease specific. Because you get kind of a broader picture of it and say, oh, any of your medications, you were to give them, patients start kind of, all of them, like, oh yeah, I take them all the time. But, so it's really better to go.
Well, and it seems like most of those information are specifically around hypertension.
Yeah, that's what I've seen too. That seems where it's been the most studied, which kind of makes sense. I think when we think about people taking antihypertensive medications, they don't feel sick necessarily.
Right.
They don't have symptoms of hypertension unless it's very serious. So what I found is, that lack of understanding about what hypertension can lead to really contributes, and just talking about adherence and kind of making patients aware of that is half the battle.
So we do have some questions that have come in from the field. So can we
So some of the questions that were chatted in asked if we could get a copy of this to use as a tool. So I don't know if that.
Christy's looking into that.
Christy's looking into that. And then another question was asking if if we thought about a way to adapt this adherence conversation to Sash participants around maybe like group programming or something. So I assume Christy's also looking into that.
Can I interject one thing? When the Sash feet went out this past, when did it go out, Kirsten, last week? There's some articles in there, which were like primer articles for this discussion. I encourage you to go back to the Sash feed and click. There's 2 links on there that are specific articles, information that I got from Dr. Morisky. So it has the scale in there. It talks about the research. It speaks to hypertension management, which, as you know, is my favorite topic. And so I think that would be a good place to start, just to educate yourself a little bit more on the scale and how it's been used. And to the question, once we are able to formalize being able to utilize it, you will all know. And the second thing of will we, talk about how to, I would say, implement this within our existing workflow? Yes, that will be a discussion that I'll have to have probably with some of the nurses and a few coordinators as well.
We also just had 2 questions come in.
Melissa,
Sorry.
I thought it was.
2 questions have just come in about the affordability of medications and how it relates to compliance.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to address that here, and I just didn't know if you could talk to that for a minute.
Yeah. I think, when I was asking these questions, I did have a couple patients identify issues with affording medications after going through these questions. I think, one nice thing about just blood pressure medications in general is there's so many different options. Normally, you're able to find a generic one available, which would be a lower cost. But I think using the scale would identify some of those issues, and I think the real benefit of using this tool would be to have those issues identified and then be able to find a solution and not just let somebody kind of keep going on not being able to afford their medication and not feeling comfortable bringing that up with a healthcare provider. So.
I had a question just on the data that you did show through there. There was some change in the right direction between baseline and 3 months later. So I'm just trying to get my head around what you consider the actual intervention. The intervention, the discussion you had with them from the survey?
Yes, I think so the intervention was kind of identifying their adherence issues and then trying to improve them in some way. Some people, if they had a issue not fully understanding what hypertension was, we had a packet that we kind of made that gave some more education. If they were concerned about, I forget to take my medications in the morning, we had some boxes that we could give them. We had some blood pressure cuffs if people were interested in, kind of monitoring their blood pressure at home. So we had a couple different things that we were able to do after going through the scale and kind of finding the patient-specific issue with adherence.
Oh, that's great.
And so the reason why this has really perked my interest is because we offer all of these interventions, and if you had the scale and you had the tool to use as a discussion point, it would then help you read into which of the final interventions do you need to implement. Is it a home blood pressure monitoring? Is it patient education? Is it, we need to go back and talk with the team because we have an affordability question. So it's just, I think it would help organize our process a little bit more.
Marci, is the patient education packet that you provided them, is that something that we can see?
Yeah, definitely. I can send it your way, and it was basically just a combination of some resources I had found from the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, and I actually had some of the what I had used here. We'll pull that up.
Great.
Yeah, so it was just kind of some information about what is high blood pressure, how it kind of affects your body, some different information about how diet, healthy eating, and physical activity can play into that. Right. What goal blood pressure would be for someone with diabetes, just in general, and
right. Good. Good. I'm sure this can add to Christy's portfolio of educational material. But it's good to use something that at least there's some reason to believe there's some improvement in reading. So I think that would be great if you could share that with us. Sounds good. Any other questions come in, Melissa?
One thing I'll say is that providers of Richmond Family Medicine were actually really surprised about how much Marci uncovered that they didn't uncover in their patients they've seen for years.
Oh, wow.
So that was the biggest impact I think they saw. Was well, we didn't, you see them for 15 minutes. There's other things going on at the same time. So having somebody even call and talk for 5 minutes about hypertension, it opens so many other avenues for what patients can come up with. And that's why we didn't really have one specific intervention. We didn't know what we were going to get into. Yeah. And then we were partnerships to do a lot of things. So that was kind of the beauty of this, that we had the tools to use to assess, and then we had the resources already set up in place so they had problems with go. But the doctors really appreciated it. It's one of those things they don't have time to do it a lot during the visit. They try to integrate some things into the visit, but there's so many other things they have to do for quality improvement measures that you kind of have to pick and choose. And even if a patient comes in for hypertension, sometimes they come for a totally different reason they're coming in when they walk in the door. So that's kind of the general feedback of the providers.
That's great to hear.
I
would hope they would really appreciate it if we.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was really informative.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Excellent. We will get those materials that Marci sends along to you all by way of Christy. So that'll be wonderful. All right. So to stay on our agenda, we're going to move to. I get to share with you about my monthly visit in February, and I spent time in our Montpelier Sash panel, and I started. And this is Jen LaPan, is the Sash coordinator there. They're currently, and I think this is still the case, unfortunately, in between wellness nurses. I think that's still the case. Jen, you can type in if you have good things to share on that. But so I met with Jen and I started out down in downtown Montpelier at the River Station apartment where Jen's main kind of her office is. And the Montpelier panel consists of she polls participants from 6 different affordable housing properties. And 2 of the properties are owned by the Down Street nonprofit housing organization there that also serves as the Duro Foundation. And 2 of the properties that Jen pulled for participants from are from Montpelier Housing Authority. And there is what we call the partner site agreement in place with Montpelier Housing Authority so that Jen can do programming at those sites and have access to the building and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting panel in that she's working with 2 different affordable housing providers, and between those 2 affordable housing providers, there's 6 different properties that she has participants from. In addition to that, she does have a small number of participants living outside of the congregate settings, the community participants. And for the most part, those community participants are largely in Montpelier. So I started the day down at River Station, which is owned by Down Street, and there's about 12 Sash participants that come from that particular apartment building. And I got the pleasure to meet with one of Jen's participants, Linda, and I had another strange experience like last time where Linda walked in and she was somebody that I worked with in a previous job. Just like last time, if you remember, the participant walked in and she was a farmer that I worked with over 20 years ago. Well, Linda I worked with 10 years ago when I worked at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Linda was the executive secretary to the commissioner of the Department of Economic Development. And a complete, firecracker then and still is, and it was just wonderful to see her. So I'm really curious what's going to happen next month, like who I'm going to run into from my past. Anyway, so Linda was great. I got to spend some time, I asked her questions about, what she has found most impactful about Sash, and this is not a woman that needs much coaxing to share. She loves to chat. The one thing that really stood out was that she loves the Moves for Wellbeing program. And I think a lot of you know about that program that's been a partnership, I think, with Senior Games, University of Vermont Center for Aging. And she has taken to that program full bore. She utilizes the online version of that. She puts in all of her minutes every day. She's hit the gold level, whatever that is. But she does a ton of walking, ton of moving. She says that 60 minutes a day she exercises. And I was kind of shocked by that because it just seemed like a lot of time. But then she really broke it down for me and said, it's like, I do 10 minutes here, and then I do another 10 minutes, and so throughout the day I keep track, but it's in these chunks of time, so it's not that I'm going out and walking around the building for 60 minutes, which I was like, that is such a great idea. Like, I'm going to take that home myself and think about exercise that way. The chunking it out is what makes it sustainable. And she, really attributes her getting involved in that kind of regular exercising to the Sash model, and to really that being the culture that Jen has brought to the panel is that, we move here and there's opportunities to do this and we're going to support you in that. So that was really great. Other things we talked about around that Linda has found so impactful with Sash is that's one of the food drop sites. With our partnership with the Vermont Food Bank, and she said that's been extremely helpful for her and other participants to have that regular access to healthy food free. So that was great. So this is a selfie of Jen and I with Linda, and I love her lipstick. This is how I remember Linda. She was like the best dressed person at the workplace, and she continued to be. So that was wonderful. Jen, is there anything you wanted to add about Linda?
Oh, Linda's she's so fun. She really enjoys the program. She really enjoys just getting out there. She's just so much fun to be around.
Absolutely. Excellent. A couple other things about kind of the downtown Montpelier presence of Sash. One of the things that Jen talked to me about is that she has a really great connection with the senior center that's right there in downtown Montpelier. They do monthly blood pressure clinics there at the senior center. So she doesn't have her nurse right now, but her nurse was doing those things. That ended up being a great spot for referrals for community members, but also just contacting existing participants that go there regularly. And then they coordinate with the meals program there to make sure the Sash participants are getting there as well. So that connection with the local senior center has added a lot of value to the Sash presence there. So our next stop, then we wanted to go and visit another Sash site of Jen's panel, and we went to one of the panels the properties that's owned by Montpelier Housing Authority called Prospect Place. And what was going on there was a weekly exercise program that Jen does with that group. And that's again, this is a property that is also in downtown Montpelier, and she has 12 participants there. And so we went over there, and as Jen promised me, there were, the participants were already there, 20 minutes before the class was supposed to start, waiting for the program, waiting for us to get there and get started. And there were about 9, there was about 9 participants that came to the class, and they come regularly. So while I said that, most of these folks were there waiting for us, what I thought was interesting, I know this happens with the rest of you, is, once we got the exercise program started, it was a DVD, and I'm going to share information about that. All of a sudden, I noticed that kind of Jen slipped away. And I just, I noticed that, and then very quickly she came down with one of her participants that was in a wheelchair. And it was a participant that, and this participant kind of apologized for being late, but she said, I just forgot, and it's great, Jen came and got me. And she was so happy to be there. And I just thought, that is such a strength of the Sash model that, Jen knows who regularly comes, knows those that tend to forget sometimes, but really want to be there and be part of it. She was able to very nonchalantly flip out, bring this participant down, and just, very seamless. So that was really, really wonderful. So we did this exercise class together. I was struck by what a diverse group this was. We ended up being able to talk for about 15 minutes after the class ended. I took a lot of questions from the group. Just diverse in age span, and there's a participant there from, I think, Germany that migrated here. I can't remember if it's Germany or Austria, but just in very different life experiences. And I really got grilled by these folks. They had all kinds of questions about how the evaluation was. How is it valid, and was the cost of the Sash program, included in, was there kind of a return on investment? I mean, they were really grilling me, and it was fabulous. And they're so supportive of the Sash model. And one of the things that came up over and over again is they said to me, this community room where we're in and doing this class, this was never used before. This community room was just here, and it was empty. And now we're coming and we're using it, and we're also we're bonding as a group because we see each other every week. So that was really fabulous. I wanted to show, I met these. Can anyone tell that these two are related? So they're sisters. These are two of the participants that were there, and I got to learn about them. And they grew up in Waterbury, and they had a family of 7, lived on a farm, and they both were able to move to Prospect Apartments. And they live right down the hall from each other. And they talked about how in the carpet, it's worn out from them walking back and forth to each other's apartments. So I just thought, what an incredible thing to be able to live your life that close to your. So anyway, they were wonderful. Very excited about the exercise program. I wanted to show you. I had to do my selfie. We had a dog. There was a dog that was hilarious. So anyway, it's a great group. None of them had done selfies before either. This was their first selfie. So that was fun. I did want to show you, because I thought the DVD that Jen uses for this class, I really thought was excellent. I've seen a lot of different exercise DVDs, and this was called Stretch and Strengthening, and it's by a woman, Anne Pringle. And I did go online just to give you guys a preview I thought she was really easy to listen to. Her flow was, not too slow, not too fast. So I'm going to just show you, this is a really small clip. Ooh, this one. Ooh, the one there's another one that's like just, can you go back to what anyway, that's her. Can we show, I can't hear it. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm assuming you guys could hear it. Anyway, so we're gonna, what I'm gonna do is, Jen got this DVD off of Amazon. Ann Pringle is the person. We'll send you information, and I'm actually planning to get a couple of these DVDs in the Sash library that you guys can then borrow, and we can do that because it was I thought it was really well done. It was about 40 minutes long. And she was really clear, and it's one of these things where if Jen wasn't there for some reason, there's no reason at all that the participants couldn't put that thing in there and do the class. They had it pretty much memorized, and they really enjoyed the way Ann Pringle ran the class on the DVD. A couple other things I just wanted to mention about the panel. I learned that the Sash team, like most of you guys, they meet once a month. They do piggyback off the Berry Sash panel meeting, so they're trying to consolidate meeting times for partners, which is great. They actually meet at the local home health agency because the space is bigger, so that and it helps also ensure participation by the home health partners. One thing that Jen said is they have regular representation at their team meetings from their community health team. One of the nurses from the community health team comes, which is great. So she said it really helps share the primary care office perspective on a monthly basis. So that was really important. As far as the challenges of this panel, Jen really highlighted is that there is, even though they're in this kind of downtown area, pretty kind of bustling area, there's still a lot of social isolation. So and I think the participants telling me at Prospect Apartments how that community room was never used before, and they weren't coming together, really confirmed that for me. Is you can think that because somebody is in an area where there's a good amount of population that they must be all set, and that's just not the case. Even our participants living in the more urban areas, we shouldn't think are all set with activities. It really does seem like it requires that communication, and to do so well. Other challenge for Jen right now is clearly not having a wellness nurse at this point. The home health agency is, working very hard to fill that vacancy, but again, struggling with the overall nursing shortage around the state. But hopefully that'll be dealt with soon. So a great visit. Thank you, Jen, very much. And is there any final things you want to add?
No, my panel enjoyed you coming. They really love Sash, especially those ladies at Prospect. The other thing I wanted to add is Montpelier and Northfield has hired a nurse. We might see her at the meeting in White River Junction, but I think her name is Adele. I'm learning as I go, but maybe Amy can chime in a little bit. But I think that it's going to be a good thing to have a nurse. It was a quick turnaround, so I think it'll be good for our participants.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And for you. That'll be helpful. You got to have a team.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you. Any questions from anyone about the Montpelier panel? Or
there's like 3 different chat ins that all said that they're familiar with the exercise program. Oh, good. They use Burlington Housing Authority, Aging Merchants, and Penny Jensen thought that was great. But
oh, good. So the Ann Pringle DVDs. Okay, good. So we will go ahead and get 1 or 2 of those DVDs and let you guys know. So those of you that want to try it out, you can just borrow it just like a book. Yeah.
I just noticed that there were no men participating in the class. Does that just represent the population, or is that representing men?
That's a good question. Anybody have an answer for that? The question was, Chris Falk, who's our new Director of Communications here at Cathedral Square, noticed there were no men in that picture. So and he wondered if that was just the nature of who we serve, or is that a challenge we have getting men to participate?
In my other buildings, I have men. That building alone probably has 4. I'm trying to think. Probably 3 men in that building, and none of them are full participants. They come in. They kind of crash events here and there just to see what's going on, which is fine. But they're not exactly signed up. But over at Pioneer, I think I have probably 12 men, 10 or 12 men signed up over there.
That's great. Yeah, so.
And Pringle DVDs, are they all in shared?
So the question was if all the Anne Pringle videos or DVDs are focused on chair exercise, and my only reason for answering so quickly is that when I was Googling it, I saw sometimes they were standing. The one that we did at Prospect was for seating. Yeah, was for seating. Yep.
And then, I mean, I would wonder if it is a challenge that if you had a site where there was.
Yeah. Does anyone do a male exercise class?
Well, I know not on exercise, but Rutland did a men's cooking class to pull the men in. I think we just have to get creative with different things to do. I don't know anybody from Rutland's on the phone to talk to that point at all, but.
Okay. We do need to remind folks to mute because we're hearing a lot of typing and like paper shuffling, and maybe with a phone or something. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so the next thing we had is a data update, and I'm not sure. We know if somebody is, that may have been a Stephanie item, and Stephanie ends up not being here this week, so I think that we should have taken that out of the agenda. So sorry about that. Unless somebody, Joan, do you have anything on that? No. Okay. All right.
Reports are out. Okay. The monthly status reports
are
coming out this
status
week.
reports are coming out. That's probably
okay.
The only latest.
Great. So be on the lookout for your monthly status reports. That's great. All right. So now we have time for any open questions or discussion. We're just checking the chat. All right. Okay, well, we are going to be getting out more information on the April 5th training to you all. We're excited that so many of you have signed up, and if you haven't yet, please do. We will get agenda information out. It's coming together really well, and it's going to be a great day there on April 5th.
Molly. Molly.
Yep.
This is Carol. I don't know if you've covered it already. I just wanted to check in regarding our assessments and reassessments, where they are as far as inputting them, and do you want us to continue to send assessments and reassessments up and have there be a backlog, or do you want us to hang tight until some of them are already put in?
Yeah, it's Melissa. So we currently have all of the initial assessments entered. So any of the initial assessments that had been sent in have now been entered, and they have started working on the reassessments. Please continue to send them up. It's good for us to know what we have to keep entering, and if you have them there at your office, I think that we might not realize how much is left. So please keep sending them up if you need the copies or whatever. Just the process that you've been doing so far, please keep doing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we also had a question from about our funding. Kind of, is there any updates on sustaining funding for Sash beyond December, the end of December 2016? So that's a great question. So nothing. Believe me, if there was something big to report, you would know. But what I can tell you is that we have regular conversations with the head of the blueprint, and as you guys know, we have Sash has been included in what's called the all-payer model proposal that the state of Vermont is applying to Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to kind of change how we spend Medicare and Medicaid dollars. And this all-payer model is something that we're currently in negotiations with CMS. the state of Vermont included not just full funding of Sash as is, but additional funding for Sash in that proposal. What we've heard from the director of the Blueprint, who's involved in these negotiations, is that CMS is very supportive of Sash being in that. We're very excited to see that the state of Vermont wanted to include Sash and the Blueprint going forward because of the excellent results. And so, but we're not going to hear for, probably a couple months whether the CMS and the state of Vermont come to, agreement that we're going to do the all-payer model as of January 1st, 2017. But everyone is feeling really good about it. What I understand, negotiations are going well. So, that's what I have. So I'm feeling very confident, and you all will hear as soon as I hear, and I'm hoping that it's within just a few months. All right. So I think that's it. So we will end a little bit early. I appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you. So it's March. So I don't know whether we'll have I guess we will have a call next month, but I'll see you on April 5th before the next call. So excellent. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.